Hey, it's Hunt. You found Hunt on Saints. We're talking black and gold football. Do us a favor. Hit the like button, share your comments below, and hit that subscription button so you can get all of our content. Enjoy. Saints news over the last 24 hours has not been headlining news, but I do think this time of year, while it's awesome if your team adds Saquon Barkley or you're the Falcons and you get Kirk Cousins, or the news cycle hits last year where the Saints get Derek Carr, and that's exciting news because it feels like it could drastically alter the path of the team for the next year. Also, maybe as important are the depth pieces that move around that fill out the 53. Every team has its headline players, and those are the guys that get the ink and the press clippings and that make the biggest plays, but sometimes they make those plays because folks around them are doing their job that may make the league minimum, but you got to have those guys. And so while neither of the two players I'm going to talk about here are household names in NFL circles, and maybe not even in a Saints household if it's not a diehard household, I do think that these are some important things that have gone on in the last 24 hours. One is a depth piece on defense for the New Orleans Saints. And Jeremy Fowler from ESPN is reporting that Isaac Yiadom is visiting Washington yesterday into today and may look into a contract with the Commanders. They've got a ton of money to spend. The experts over at Over the Cap say that almost $70 million the Commanders have to spend. And the Saints obviously don't have near that. They've got closer to $15 million to spend. But Yiadom has played very well for New Orleans, in my opinion, and he's one of the reasons why I feel like if the Saints were to move on from Marshawn Lattimore, they would still be okay in the secondary because you've got Alontae Taylor and Paulson Adebo, and I think Yiadom can step in and help you in the secondary, which he's done in his time in black and gold. If he does move on, it just, in my opinion, makes moving Marshawn Lattimore a little bit more dicey, depending on what you get back for him. It was really cornerback and nickel, secondary, really the only spot the Saints really had depth where they could move some pieces around and still have a sustainable front. I mean, if Ryan Ramczyk and Andrus Pete don't come back, which doesn't appear Pete is, and Ramczyk it looks like it is, but they don't, like, you're real thin at offensive line. Like, your running back room is not super deep. You've got an aging Kamara, Kendre Miller, who hadn't given you much. Like, I don't feel awesome about that. Wide receiver, you've got to go draft one. You don't have a lot of depth there. You just added at linebacker with Willie Gay, but before that, like, you were real thin there. I don't know that the defensive front is overly deep. Like, secondary is really the only place that you felt like you had a little bit of leverage to go make a move and get some assets back. And Yiadom's a big piece of that to me. And I think he's a starter caliber player on the lower end. He's not Marshawn Lattimore. I'm not trying to suggest that he is. But he has played for you and played, I believe, nicely. And if he moves on and goes to Washington because they can spend a little bit more on him, all of a sudden your numbers, they don't get tight at corner, but they get tighter. And it makes it more difficult to move on from Marshawn Lattimore, which is something I think the Saints should explore because I'm all about the Saints getting cheaper and younger. Of course, the Saints are all about the Saints trying to get better for this year. And while that sounds good on its face, at times comes with some issues that we've discussed. So I'm interested to see what comes from this Isaac Yiadom free agency situation because, look, when you look at the contract situations for the Saints, potentially you could move on from Lattimore. Adebo is entering the final year of his contract. You're getting towards the back end of the rookie deal for Alontae Taylor. So it is a stable spot, but you've got to kind of keep it that way. Whether that's extending Adebo, whether that's extending Taylor, whether that's determining just to push forward with this group intact. We'll see, but I think that's a very, very interesting piece of this Saints offseason. The other news of the day for the New Orleans Saints is James Hurst being brought back at what essentially boils down to a pay cut with the New Orleans Saints. Hurst was really a big help at tackle early in his time in New Orleans. They moved him down to guard last year and put Pete at tackle, and the level of performance wasn't quite there. but this is a guy that the Saints have trusted to play multiple positions on the offensive line. He's a veteran at this point, and he's now dropped his salary down to the veteran minimum. His base salary was going to be $3 million. It's now been reduced to the league minimum of 1.21. He gave up some bonuses, which lowered his cap hit down to $2.97 million from its initial number of 6.5. This is not getting younger. It is getting a little bit cheaper. And I don't know exactly what the conversations were between Hurst and his representation and the Saints and kind of how this came about, but it feels like Hurst was looking for some real job security, and the Saints offered that even if it was at a reduced salary. So I'm okay with it. Getting cheaper, good with me. There was a time, and my journey with the Saints salary cap has been a winding one as we've kind of learned a little bit more about this. It started me saying, this is ridiculous, always being over the cap. Like, this is a bad way to run your franchise. And then I realized, no, you know what? It's a really good way to do things because you've got a really good team. And if you can add to it and then just figure out the money down the road, go win the freaking Super Bowl, which they could have done. And now I've moved off of that as like, please get out of this garbage situation that you're in with a middling football team that has trouble adding to it because there's not enough funds available. When you're trying to fill one hole, screw the cap up all you want. When you're trying to fill six without a lot of room with the salary cap, that's how Isaac Yiadom gets away. So I think this is a good thing for the Saints to have Hurst take less money, bring some depth to that offensive line, and they've got to figure that out. They've got two new voices in that room for the offensive line. They've moved on from Doug Marrone. They've got some talented guys that have either played in the NFL for a very long time or have been very, very high draft picks or both. They've got to find a way to be more productive on the offensive front. I don't think James Hurst can't play at all. Am I married to him being the left tackle? I'm not. So they got to figure something out here, but this adds a little bit of depth at a very inexpensive price tag. I am for that at this point. Anytime I see those numbers coming down, sign me up. I'm just fine with it. So news of the Saints day, Isaac Yiadom looking at other places, including Washington. James Hurst coming back at the league minimum, taking a bit of a pay cut there across the offensive line. Hey, it's on. Thanks for watching Hunt on Saints. Before you leave, help us out a little bit. Hit that like button, leave your comments in the section below, and hit that subscribe button so you get all our content right here from Hunt on Saints. We'll see you next time.